The sun was sinking behind Silverline Motors, painting the glass walls of the luxury car dealership in streaks of gold and fire. Inside, the showroom gleamed like a cathedral of wealth, rows of high-end cars polished so perfectly you could see your reflection in their chrome. For most of the staff, it was just another evening. Papers shuffled. Sales reps chatted up prospective buyers. The hum of polite conversations mixed with the faint scent of leather and fresh coffee. Then, from outside, came the sound that split the evening in half. Screeching tires. Every head turned toward the glass. 2 police cruisers came whipping into the lot, sirens off but lights flashing like war drums in the dusk. Doors slammed. And just like that, the quiet hum of Silverline Motors was gone. Darius Cole stood near the entrance, his black Escalade parked in the first row of premium spots, the kind usually reserved for executives and VIPs. He wasn't in a suit tonight. Instead, he wore a crisp white button-down with the sleeves rolled just enough to reveal strong, weathered forearms. Dark slacks, polished shoes. Unapologetic. At 38, Darius carried himself like a man who had nothing to prove, and yet everything about him demanded respect. He had the kind of presence that filled a room without him saying a word: athletic build, close-cropped fade with flecks of gray, and eyes that stayed calm even when the world around him didn't. He clicked his key fob. The Escalade chirped in response. That's when he heard it. Hands in the air. The command tore through the air like glass shattering. Darius froze, his hands still hovering near the door handle. 2 officers, Trent and Collins, were moving fast, weapons still holstered but hands resting on them with the kind of confidence that only came from too many nights pulling the same stunt. "Sir." "I step away from the vehicle." Trent barked. His voice stayed even. "Is there a problem, officer?" Darius turned slowly. His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed even. "Is there a problem, officer?" Collins smirked, the kind of smirk that didn't belong on a man wearing a badge. "We got a call about a suspicious individual lurking around the cars. Care to explain what you're doing here?" Darius raised a brow, his gaze steady. "I'm unlocking my vehicle. Is that suspicious now?" Trent stepped closer, his shadow stretching long in the fading sunlight. "Don't get cute. License and registration. Now." Darius chuckled, not out of amusement, but disbelief. "You didn't even ask me if I owned the car," he said, moving deliberately, slow enough to show he wasn't a threat. He reached into his pocket for his wallet. "You just came in hot, like you were about to save the day." Neither officer blinked. And behind the glass walls of the dealership, the first phone cameras were already out. Because this wasn't just an arrest. This was a spectacle. Inside, customers and employees pressed closer to the glass. A salesman whispered to the receptionist, "Do they even know who that is?" She didn't look away from her phone. "Guess not." One by one more phones came up. Social media was already about to have its next viral moment. Outside, Darius stood tall, his expression carved from stone. "Hands where I can see them," Trent ordered, his voice clipped. "And don't move." Darius lifted his hands slowly, every motion calculated. He looked them dead in the eye. "I hope those body cams are on," he said. Collins laughed under his breath. "Oh, don't worry. You'll get your close-up." Darius tilted his head, the faintest smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Good. I'd hate for you to miss this lesson." Collins didn't like that. He moved in fast, yanking Darius's wrists behind his back and snapping the cuffs shut harder than necessary. The metallic click echoed across the lot. Gasps rippled from inside the dealership. Trent pushed Darius toward the hood of the cruiser. "You have the right to remain silent." Darius turned his head, his voice cutting through like steel. "No. You have the right to stop embarrassing yourselves before you end up in a lawsuit that costs you your badge. For a split second, Trent hesitated. Just a split second. The dealership doors banged open. Marla, the general manager, stormed out, heels clacking against the pavement. Her blazer was sharp, her expression sharper. "Officers," she shouted, fury in her voice. "What do you think you're doing? That's Mr. Cole." Trent didn't even look at her. "Ma'am, step back." "No," Marla snapped. "You don't understand. He owns this dealership." Collins froze mid-step. "What?" Trent's smirk wavered. Darius tilted his head toward Marla, his calm returning like a tide rolling back in. "Go ahead," he said coolly. "Tell them again." Marla crossed her arms. "He's the CO. Your boss's boss couldn't afford the car he drove in with. And you just slapped handcuffs on him." The crowd inside the dealership erupted in murmurs. Collins blinked. "Wait. What?" Darius leaned forward slightly, his voice low but sharp enough to draw blood. "You got a call. And instead of asking a single question, you came in here ready to play hero. Now you're about to be the poster boys for why my legal team exists." Trent glanced at Collins, his hand twitching near the cuffs. Collins swallowed. "Should we?" Trent unclipped the cuffs. The sound of metal snapping open was louder than the murmurs of the crowd. Darius rubbed his wrists slowly, his gaze never leaving them. "You know what the difference is between you and me?" he asked. Trent's jaw clenched. "What?" "I don't need a gun to make people regret underestimating me." By now, the entire staff had spilled out of the dealership. Phones were recording from every angle. Darius didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He looked at the crowd. "Make sure you tag the department when you post this," he said calmly. "Wouldn't want them to miss their moment." The laughter that followed wasn't kind. It was sharp, biting, the kind that cuts deeper than any weapon. Trent and Collins looked like they wanted to vanish. Marla stepped closer, her voice dropping. "Do you want me to call your lawyer?" Darius's smirk returned. "No. Let them call theirs. I'll see them in court." He pressed the unlock button on his Escalade, the chirp of the car loud in the tense silence. Then, without another word, he got in and drove off, leaving behind 2 humiliated officers, a crowd full of witnesses, and a storm that had only just begun. Because if there's one thing the city was about to learn, it was this. Darius Cole didn't just play defense. He came to win. And tomorrow? He'd make sure the whole world was watching. The next morning, Darius Cole was already awake before sunrise. Sleep had been brief, but that didn't matter. He wasn't the kind of man who needed 8 hours. He'd built an empire on less, long nights, early mornings, and relentless focus. But today wasn't just another business day. Today was war. On his desk sat a file thick with paperwork, each page carrying the same title. Cole vs. City of Eastbrook Police Department. The ink wasn't even dry, but the intent was crystal clear. Darius didn't want revenge. He wanted a reckoning. By dawn, the video of the arrest had already spread across every corner of the city. Customers who'd been at Silverline Motors the night before had posted their recordings. Dealership security footage had leaked. It was everywhere. People weren't just watching, they were talking. Some were stunned by the arrogance of the officers. Others admired the way Darius stood calm while being cuffed in front of his own business. Darius didn't care about the noise. He cared about action. He dialed the one man who could turn this storm into a weapon. "Tell me you've seen it," Darius said when the call connected. "I've seen it," replied Marcus Avery, his voice sharp and certain. Marcus was a civil rights attorney with a reputation for making cities pay when their arrogance cost innocent people their dignity. "This isn't a case," Marcus continued. This is a blueprint for a courtroom beating. 2 officers. Public arrest. No probable cause. Video from 6 different angles. They'll fold before this even hits trial. Darius leaned back in his chair. The sun was barely breaking over the horizon, its light catching on the hood of the black Escalade parked just outside his office. "I don't want them to fold," he said quietly. Marcus went silent for a beat. "Then what do you want?" "I want this to mean something," Darius replied. "I want the next man who looks like me to walk into a dealership without worrying about ending up face down on the hood of a cruiser. I want them to be afraid to do this again." Marcus exhaled slowly, almost smiling. "Then I'll file the suit by noon." "Make it loud," Darius said. "And make it hurt." By midday, Silverline Motors looked less like a dealership and more like a press conference. News vans lined the street. Reporters leaned against tripods, rehearsing their questions while photographers clustered near the entrance. Inside, staff whispered nervously as Darius walked out of his office, calm and measured. No suit, just a crisp white shirt, rolled sleeves, and the same quiet composure that unsettled men who underestimated him. "Mr. Cole," one reporter called, "are you suing the department?" "Yes," Darius said evenly. "Do you believe this was racial profiling?" "I believe 2 officers thought they could treat me like a suspect before they treated me like a man," he replied. "And they're about to learn they were wrong." The cameras snapped. And Darius? He simply turned and walked back inside. He didn't need to sell this story. The truth was doing it for him. Across town, the Eastbrook Police Department was in chaos. Inside a sterile conference room, the police chief slammed a folder on the table. "Trent and Collins are suspended until further notice," he barked. A PR officer shifted nervously. "The mayor wants a statement." "I don't care what the mayor wants," the chief snapped. "What I want is for this to go away." But it wasn't going away. Marcus Avery had filed the lawsuit at exactly noon. It was public and it was brutal. A gross violation of civil rights committed in full view of witnesses, cameras, and the defendant's own body-worn devices. The department had no idea what was coming next. When the case hit court, the room was packed. Reporters filled the back rows. Activists lined the walls. Even a few Silverline Motors employees had shown up, standing shoulder to shoulder like loyal soldiers waiting for the battle to begin. Darius sat at the plaintiff's table beside Marcus, who looked like a man sharpening a blade. Across from them, the city's attorneys shuffled nervously through their notes. "Mr. Cole," the judge said, peering over his glasses, "you allege you were detained unlawfully without probable cause?" "Yes, Your Honor," Darius replied, calm and clear. "And you have video evidence?" Marcus stood. "Multiple angles, Your Honor. From witnesses, dealership security cameras, and even the officers' body cams. None of it paints the department in a flattering light." The judge gave a slow nod. "Then this case will proceed." A murmur rippled through the room. And for the first time since the night of his arrest, Darius allowed himself the faintest smile. 2 weeks later, Officer Trent found himself under oath. Without his badge or gun, he looked smaller, just another man forced to answer for the choices he'd made. "Officer Trent," Marcus began, pacing before the jury, "why did you draw your weapon on Mr. Cole?" Trent shifted in his seat. "We received a call about a suspicious individual." Marcus stopped, tilting his head. "Suspicious," he repeated. Mr. Cole was wearing business attire. He was unlocking a vehicle registered in his name. And your first instinct was to treat him like a criminal. Trent hesitated. We didn't know who he was. And you didn't ask, Marcus fired back. You didn't speak to him. You didn't check his plates. You didn't do a single thing except decide, in that moment, that a black man in front of an Escalade must be guilty of something. Isn't that right? Trent's face flushed. We were just doing our job. Marcus turned toward the jury. And that, he said, is exactly why this lawsuit exists. The trial stretched for days. Each witness added weight to the scale. Marla, the dealership manager, testified with righteous fury. I told them he was the owner, she said. They didn't care. They put him in cuffs anyway. Security footage was played in court, frame by frame. Every moment, the handcuffs, the bystanders recording, the officers ignoring every chance to ask a single question, was undeniable. By the time the defense rested, the city knew it was finished. 3 weeks later, the police department surrendered. A public apology from the chief of police. A payout so large it made the evening news. And most importantly, a binding agreement that every single officer in Eastbrook would undergo mandatory bias and de-escalation training. It wasn't just a win. It was a precedent. Reporters swarmed Darius on the courthouse steps. Mr. Cole, do you feel vindicated? One asked. Darius adjusted his cuffs, his voice even and measured. This was never about me. This was about the next man. The one who won't need a courtroom to get his dignity back. The cameras clicked. The crowd cheered. And for the first time since that night outside his dealership, Darius felt the weight lift from his shoulders. That evening, Darius stood in front of Silverline Motors, the setting sun painting the glass walls in gold. Marla stepped up beside him, arms crossed, shaking her head with a smile. You know, most men would have taken the money and walked away. Darius smirked, eyes on the horizon. I'm not most men. He clicked his key fob. The Escalade chirped. And this time, when he opened the door, there were no flashing lights. No shouting. No humiliation. Only silence. And victory.